Some time ago, a United Church of Christ minister named Lillian Daniel caused quite a stir in a blog that she wrote. People were a little surprised. She was brutally honest about why she dreaded, as a minister, letting the seatmate on a plane know what she does for a living. I can relate. I have often made up professions and then had to explain how, yeah, it's an awkward conversation. It can be, and not one you necessarily want to engage in. It can either be a showstopper or lead you down some rabbit hole that you're not prepared for. I tried to pretend I'm sleeping. So she writes, like people, so it starts with the response that she tended to get when she would tell people that she's a minister on a plane, and this happens to me too, is this self-congratulatory, oh yeah, well I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Anybody here say that? Yeah, I get it too, and that leads into a great conversation, but not on a plane, please. And so she wrote, sarcastically, like people who go to church don't see God in the sunset. Like we are these monastic little hermits who never leave the church building. How lucky we are to have these geniuses inform us that God is in nature. As if we don't hear that in the Psalms, the creation stories, and throughout our own deep tradition. Being privately spiritual, but not religious, she says, just doesn't interest me. There is nothing challenging about having deep thoughts all by oneself. What is interesting is doing this work in community, where people might call you on stuff, or, heaven forbid, disagree with you. Where life with God gets rich and provocative is when you dig deeply into a tradition that you did not invent all yourself. She says, thank you for sharing, spiritual but not religious sunset person. You are now comfortably in the norm for self-centered culture. Right smack in the bland majority of people who find ancient religions dull, but find themselves uniquely fascinating. Can I switch seats and sit next to someone who has been shaped by a mighty cloud of witnesses instead? Can I spend my time talking to someone brave enough to encounter God in a real human community? Because when this flight gets choppy, that's who I want at my side. Holding my hand and saying a prayer and simply putting up with me, just like we try to do in church.
I just want to say I picked that reading. It's not her fault. Some years ago, I saw another blog post by one of my Unitarian Universalist colleagues, Reverend Victoria Weinstein, that was the best description that I've ever found about what a church should be. In that she wrote, "Today the church is an outsider institution, as it always should have been. It exists to question cultural norms, to help us want the right things, and to hunger and thirst for justice, to make us uncomfortable with the gap between our professed ideals and our actions, It exists to claim us, to shake us, to demand of us, and to make us new people, siblings of one another, lovers of the world, workers on behalf of the kingdom of equals, and the kind of people that others are so drawn to that they can't help but ask, wow, where did you get trained to be such an amazing human being? I love that last sentence. I think that's what our religious communities can be about. It actually is what we are when we're at our best. And what better purpose is there for a life than to train to be the best, deepest, most authentic human beings we can, because the world desperately cries out for those people. Wise people, compassionate people, loving people, and yes, happy people. Because that is our birthright. And we all have potential, greater and greater potential. We put these spiritual giants of human history on a pedestal, and we should. People like Jesus and the Buddha. But we're Unitarians. So we don't believe that Jesus was God. We believe Jesus was human. But he lived a life of love and forgiveness and radical acceptance and deep insights. Since he was human, we have that potential too. We have the heart of Jesus. The Buddha understood a way beyond suffering, a way to train the mind and the heart to live a life with a path toward integrity, oneness, unity. The Buddha was human. He was a person, which means that we have basically the same neurological structure as he did. So not only do we have the heart of Jesus, we have Buddha's brain. Or at least we have that potential. I was once challenged to frame the mission of the church in business terms, and we played with that yesterday at the board retreat. Now, I resisted that at first because I think way too often we put things in market terms, and often that's inappropriate. But I decided to take up this challenge and to answer these questions. What business is the church in? And what is the product of the church? It didn't take me long to come up with my answers to these questions. The business of the church is to create whole human beings, and its product is healed lives that help heal the world. I wish that more people knew about communities like this, that they are available for this mission of creating whole human beings and helping to heal the world. We have been so coy about spreading our good news. You know, and it's harder today because right now, every brand of organized religion is a bad brand. The whole idea of organized religion is a bad brand, especially among younger generations. Many younger generations wouldn't even consider attending a church or synagogue or temple. And who can blame them? I don't actually blame that spiritual but not religious person. I just wish he would look deeper. Who can blame them? With bishops in the Catholic Church still not getting that the church is in trouble because they allowed priests to rape children? That is unbelievable to me. I get it, why people have a bad idea about organized religion when they see all those horrible televangelists milking the vulnerable for their own wealth on television. I get it that so much of organized religion is homophobic, transphobic, hypocritical, dogmatic, judgmental, and stuck in the past. Yeah, a bad brand. And since we are a semi-organized religion, people put us in the same category, not understanding what our mission is about, not understanding what we're about, not understanding what we could offer. And we should open our doors and our hearts and let people know what there is. While people might claim to be spiritual but not religious, people still have a deep yearning for meaning. People still have a deep yearning to address the deep questions of life, those mysteries. Like, what does it mean to be happy? Why are we here? Why do I have to die? And why do the people I love have to die? What does it mean to be good? How do I love? And how can I be loved? These questions don't go away. And sometimes the answers don't come by thinking deep thoughts by ourselves. This community can help us address those thoughts. Being spiritual by yourself will only take you so far. If you look at neuroscience, it turns out that we can't even be fully human. Our brains don't even function properly. And we're finding this out with the isolation of the pandemic. Our brains don't even function properly unless we are deeply connected, closely in relationship with a band of other human beings. We're part of nature. Actually, we're mammals, which means we're together, we need to bond. We need to survive, to be mammals. We're even that more, we're higher primates, which means to totally express our humanity, we need to be in these bands. We need to groups. We need to see and hear and smell each other. We need to fight each other and forgive each other to be fully human. And that's not what a lot of people experience. And a lot of people don't even see an alternative. And that breaks my heart. The Harvard sociologist Robert Putnam, famous for his essay, Bowling Alone, did some studies, 2 different studies, 1985 and 2004. And in that study, he asked people to tell him how many people they could confide in if they were desperately in need for support. Who could they tell their secrets to and their wounds to? Deep friendships. And when in 1985 and especially in 2004 they looked at the data, they had a hard time accepting it. They had to run the numbers again. So the answer given most often for people they could confide in 1985 was 3. In 2004, the answer given most often was none. So that number jumped from 10% to 25.6%. It jumped from 1 in 10 to 1 in 4. And this is a US study, but Statistics Canada tells us that in Canada, 1 in 10 people are always lonely. 1 in 10 Canadians are always lonely. So we have a loneliness epidemic, and 2004, think of the isolating technology that has woven itself into our lives. That number's got to be a lot worse. And we can tell. We can tell. Lives lived in isolation and lonely. Lives lived with yearning for relationships and connection and intimacy and sharing, some bad things can happen. People can find a common purpose in an extremist group. This ordinary human yearning can lead to some toxic consequences. So we need a place to belong. That's just who we are. Mammals, primates. We need a place. Some of you remember the TV series Cheers. Who does? And have you seen reruns if you're too young to remember that? What was Cheers? Cheers is a place where everybody knew your name. We all need a place where everybody knows our name. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a bar. It could be our neighborhood. It could be a bowling league. It could be, I guess, curling league up here. It could be a group that shares hobbies together. But the church it could be an ideal place for us to forge these deep connections and friendships. Dr. Dean Ornish, a cardiologist and a researcher, established that people who regularly take part in religious congregations are way healthier than people who aren't. And that is even controlling for things like smoking, lack of exercise, poor diet, and obesity. People still live longer than people who don't participate regularly in religious communities. So you're in the right place. Right now, since I left parish ministry, teaching people about spiritual practice is the core of my ministry as a spiritual director. And I can't tell you enough about the benefits of a regular spiritual practice, especially meditation. It's a very powerful tool for transforming ourselves. In fact, regular meditation has been shown in study after study to remodel our brains in a really good way so that we can be happier, progressively happier despite outer conditions. But you can still have a spiritual life even if you don't have a regular spiritual practice. Being part of a community is a spiritual life. The 15th century French monk, Brother Lawrence, once said, "If you knew what the soul said to God sometimes, you'd be surprised." Don't panic, I have a humanist translation. If you listen to your most authentic self, much of great importance can be revealed. The church is a place where we and our children can learn and be reminded where virtue and integrity are. The church can be a place in this current climate where we're encouraged to act on our deepest values and to be reminded about what they are on a regular basis and to actually live them. The church is the place where we can learn about the value of generosity. As Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg wrote, practicing generosity is the beginning of spiritual awakening. It's recognizing our profound oneness with others, all beings, and with the planet. And the joy of giving is not just giving money and spiritual resources, although I hope you give generously to this congregation. It is also giving of our unique talents and skills, of our precious time, of our compassion, of our attention, of our care. And it's true and a deep and ancient spiritual truth that the more we give, the more we receive back what we give. So giving is a very powerful tool for transformation, and a religious community is the place where we learn that. The church is the place where we can learn about gratitude. One of the most ancient of all prayers is counting our blessings. And there's actually people now doing research on bringing the things that we are grateful for to our attention, maybe even writing them down, gratitude practice. Scientific research is establishing more and more that physical and psychological benefits come about, a wide range of them, just by paying attention to the things that we are grateful for, counting our blessings. The church is the place where we can be with those all-important role models. Think about the people in this congregation, if you're a regular participant, that inspire you, that show you what a good person can be like. That was one of the big gifts I got when I was here as your intern back then. I had so many wonderful role models in this congregation, and I'm so grateful. Now, this is a special and difficult time, and the church now, I think, has a unique mission. So think about what's happened in the last almost 2 years. We've been flooded with stress hormones, traumatized to greater or lesser degrees, but all of us have. All the fear, uncertainty, grief, all of that, what happens when we flooded with stress hormones is fight, flight, freeze. You might have noticed, or maybe you've been a bit more absent-minded, like I didn't know when to go to the thing there. And it also makes us short-tempered if we're flooded with stress hormones, and more self-centered. We need this place, especially now. And we need to make a decision more and more to be the best human beings we can be, because we need each other to be that right now. To give an extra measure of mercy, to give an extra measure of compassion, to give an extra measure of forgiveness. The church is in the business of creating whole human beings. Whole human beings have an open mind and an open heart. They're reflective and aware. Whole human beings grow and learn, and therefore they admit their mistakes. They're honest with themselves and with others. They know they're not perfect. And because they know that, they don't expect others to be perfect, and they're quick to forgive. Whole human beings have a sense of humor, laughing at themselves first and not at others. They love with depth and power. They're kind to others and also take care of themselves. They understand that they're part of a story that is much larger and longer than their own lives, part of a story that goes back generations. They walk gently on the earth and spend time in nature for its healing power and for its profound lessons. Whole human beings feel responsibility to the whole human community. They stand with those who are mistreated, oppressed, and abused. They're not living to be good consumers. Because they love, they are loved. Because of their integrity, they inspire the integrity of others. They're the righteous who hold up the world, who show us all how to live. And I submit to you that it is a great adventure that this congregation is engaged in. Being a movement, being a band of those who resolve to be whole human beings, and therefore who with open hearts and open arms welcome those hungry souls who have found this place in this adventure of the Spirit. Amen, and may it be so.
member congregations of the Canadian Unitarian Council covenant to affirm and promote
la valeur et la dignité intrinsèque de chaque personne,
justicia, equidad y compasión en las relaciones humanas,
气力，努力于彼此接受及鼓励大家在精神方面的成长。
Freies und verantwortungsvolles Suchen nach dem Sinn des Lebens.
在我們眾人和整個社會中使用我哋良心嘅權力和民主程序。
The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
私たちがすべての生き物と共存する網の目の一部であることへの尊敬。
Individual and communal action that accountably dismantles racism and systemic barriers to full inclusion in ourselves and our institutions.